Innovate Pasadena Presents. I'm your host, Beth Kuchar, President of Innovate Pasadena. Innovate Pasadena believes in exchanging knowledge and discussing topics that drive our innovation economy forward and enrich the community. Today, we're joined by Chuck Chugumlung, Art Center alumni, creative director, and co-organizer of the highly successful Friday Coffee Meetup and the Innovate Pasadena Design X Meetup. Welcome, Chuck. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, I think a lot of people might recognize you from the Friday Coffee Meetup as the guy behind the camera, but there's a lot more to you than that. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm a child of immigrants, actually. My parents moved here when I was 4 years old. I'm from Thailand, and my father became a drafting engineer, and my mother became a nurse. So I grew up in a working class family. Growing up in a family of immigrants, you're kind of stuck with either finding a job where you're kind of working, a 9 to 5, and doing some sort of a day-to-day job where you're of benefit to your family and things, and then. Unfortunately, I had that bug in me that was more on the creative side. So discovering that and telling my parents later on that I wanted to go to art school to study design was...
I want to be a starving artist.
Yeah, that was probably the worst news I probably could give my parents.
Oh, no.
Of a struggling, lower middle class, immigrant family. But reluctantly, my parents, agreed, and they allowed me to go to art school, and I graduated from Art Center College of Design back in 1994, and specializing in interactive media, of course. And at the time, interactive media was kind of at an infancy.
That had been a really new thing in '94.
It was a really relatively new thing. It started off with DVD-ROMs, and we all know what happened to those. Yeah. Technology evolves and things kind of get shifted. But then later on, I studied 3D animation, and I added 3D into my formatting of interactive design, and later on I progressed and moved into web design, and all my disciplines and practices at Art Center kind of evolved me into becoming a UI UX designer.
That's fantastic. So you eventually were able to pull everything together and incorporate technology as well.
Yeah, actually technology was a really big part of design, especially in an ever evolving market of entertainment, which was where I was focused into when I graduated from college.
So did you work at some big agencies and have the agency life?
Yeah, a few big agencies. I worked at a couple of really great agencies that were just allowed me to just. Actually, they just gave me creative freedom, and that's probably where I thrive the most. Is at the agencies where they just allowed you to sort of explore and innovate and be creative, and a lot of it was just me experimenting with not just one medium, but various different mediums, and incorporating it into a great experience.
Do you have a favorite project or something that ranks up there with something a great learning experience?
Well, I don't know if it was a great project, but it was definitely a learning experience.
Okay.
Well, I was working for, I was drafted to work on a campaign for Mercedes-Benz at Razorfish in New York. And I remember at the time, there was a transition. It was a transitional period when Razorfish was changing ownership, and so a lot of the creative directors were being downsized, and there were not a lot of people that were able to manage such large, creative capacity, such as in interactive and 3D elements. So I was hired by a friend at the agency to go to New York and work on this campaign for Mercedes-Benz. It was up to the minute, just before Bryant Park.
Wow.
So I probably would have enjoyed my time, in the creative process more if I knew I had at least 4 hours to sleep in between my shifts. But
that sounds challenging.
It was a challenge. Agency work, you're challenged, to optimize creativity, but work at a very high capacity. So my lesson from that is that, like, it's delegation. Learning to delegate is very important, and having a really good fundamental foundation in design processes is going to get you through those hurdles. Because without it, you're literally throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark.
Right, you got to learn that lesson quick.
Yeah, and first years out of college, you generally do, and you learn your way around it. But again, what I learned in art school was completely different than what I learned in the work environment. Processes didn't come until after until I was in the workforce.
Yeah, that tends to happen. So right. I want to change gears a little bit and talk about your DesignX meetup, because sure. You recently launched a 4-part workshop on design thinking, and I think your part 3 is coming up soon. Yeah,
part 3 is coming up soon, and what we do is we reinforce better design practices through design thinking processes, which is emphasizes empathizing with the human needs. It's understanding the human part of what you're designing for, and
so design thinking. Is there something, it's a big buzzword, a lot of entrepreneurs and startups are trying to incorporate design thinking into their process, but is there something major that people get wrong about design thinking?
I think the major thing that they get wrong about design thinking is that they generally believe that it's going to solve everything, or it's going to solve nothing. And I think that's the innate problem with design processes, is people rely on it heavily to solve big problems. What they don't understand that, like, it's more of an evolutionary process rather than, like a complete solution to a problem, right?
Solve my problem, on to the next thing.
Right, and it's like I think it's the innate problem that people, people haven't figured out a way to quantify design, in projects and services yet. What I was doing through DesignX is to give people a better understanding of design processes and to help them innovate by reinforcing, like, essentially 3 values.
And can you share those values?
Sure. Well, understanding that product has to service the market you have to understand the desirability of a product, and then you have to understand the business model of your product or service, which basically encompasses the viability of the product. And then, of course, you have to, if you're going to produce a product, you have to consider technology, obviously, which is, we talk about the feasibility, of the product in the market. And I think with understanding the viability, the feasibility, and the desirability of a project or service, you can kind of focus on the innovation of a product rather than just simply, the design-centric or the technology-centric or the business-centric executions in the of getting a product in the marketplace.
So this is really a complete process too. Potentially, it can be very useful for not just a designer or a creative, but all business people, anyone who's venturing out, running their own thing,
right.
Or even someone who's a manager at a larger organization.
Right.
Do you have what are your members like for your meetup group? Do you have a big variety?
Yeah, actually, we have a pretty big variety. It ranges from people, project managers, CEOs, small companies, startups, and designers, people who just want to get, I think what they want to do is they want to make sure that their product survives, their product meets the market demands. They want to make sure that the product is sustainable, right. Once it's put out there. The problem is with products and services is that, like, there's a very limited amount of time for testing. And so what we try to do is put best practices forward in understanding and empathizing with the human needs first, and making sure that the product meets those demands before it gets put out. Is every consideration being made before it's put out? What haven't been considered? What can be changed? What can be augmented? What can be enhanced? what are we missing,
Wow,
So
that's a lot lot to
it's a lot of
impart,
knowledge.
And
Yeah.
it sounds like you guys do some really interesting work with
Right.
your groups and your workshops.
Right.
Fantastic.
So
Well, I would imagine that anyone could benefit from participating. Do they just find you on meetup.com?
yeah, you can find us. You can just search us on the meetup at Innovate Pasadena DesignX or Design Pasadena. You can search either of those two, and then you can just join our meetup. We meet every second Monday of the month, and
Great.
there's a different topic every month. But right now, we're just focusing on the design thinking processes leading up to Connect Week, where we will pick 5 presenters to present at the Connect Week event in October.
Fantastic event.
Yeah.
Oh,
so.
that's great. I'm looking forward to it.
Actually, I am too. I hope they do their homework. So.
Right. That's a lot of effort, though, that I commend you, because that's a ton of effort to put in organizing every few weeks and coming up with these workshops and all of this hands-on experience to share with the community.
Thank you. And also, believe it or not, there's people in the community who have gone through the processes also, who also share, and they help validate and
So
they help contribute.
once they've learned, they
Yeah.
can jump right in and
Right.
teach as well.
So it is a group. It is is a community effort. To get everybody's products and services the best face forward. So.
Fantastic. Well, I do want to talk more about meetups in general and your involvement in the Pasadena community, but we're going to go to a break right now. Stay with us and we'll talk more on business and design.
Greetings, Bill Nye here, CEO of the Planetary Society, coming to you from sunny Pasadena, California. It might not seem like it at first glance, but this little town has been the birthplace of some of humankind's biggest ideas. Am I right, Cassie? It was here we discovered the ever-expanding universe and our place within it. And here we got up close and personal with our far, far away friends. Yes, like a powerful magnet, this little town in Southern California draws the brightest minds from every corner of the globe. While the city's past made history, its present writes humankind's future. Today, a new wave of brilliant minds carry the torch, and with gazes fixed permanently upward, make it their mission to uncover the universe's greatest mysteries. Every day, fueled by a passion for progress, the creations of the curious, the experiments of the fearless, and the pursuits of dreamers come together right here to move us forward and change life as we know it. From NASA JPL to Carnegie Observatories to the Planetary Society to Art Center College of Design to Innovate Pasadena and to Caltech. With that much brain power all in one place, it's only natural that the innovative spirit spills into the air, inspiring all who breathe it in. Want to experience tomorrow for yourself? Come visit this little town cranking out big ideas. It's where great minds meet.
Made a brick and made a stone. You hold my life and everything I've known. We're all erased within your walls. Glass and mortar windows to your soul.
Welcome back. We've been chatting with Chuck Chugumlung, DesignX meetup organizer, and we've also been talking about business and design. So Chuck, we were just discussing the DesignX meetup and the design thinking workshop that you've been running. And you're also a co-organizer for the Friday Coffee meetup. Can you talk a little bit about that group as well?
Yeah, I can talk a lot about that, actually.
A lot of it about that group, huh?
Actually, it was one of the first organizations that I had made a commitment to 3 years ago. They were actually interested in actually recording some of the content that they had at the speakers. They didn't really have an archive at the time of the speakers, and I thought it would be a really great idea if we had just started documenting some of those speakers. And what led to starting off with my iPhone, you know, shooting speakers in front, trying to stabilize the camera.
And also that famous, you know, after they talk, they get the shot with the crowd.
Oh yeah, everybody knew who I was because I was right there with the raptor claws with the phone, like in front, recording the speakers. So it's like, smile for the camera, just don't make it obvious.
Right.
So the first few videos were like a little bit kind of rough.
Getting a groove. But
yeah.
Every Friday, that's a lot of content to be filming, and that's a big commitment.
It's a lot. We have over 100 videos, like at least over 150 videos now. Yeah, because I started recording about 3 years ago, since 2015.
And you've had some high-profile speakers. I mean, some really great topics, and there's a big variety of people who attend. You know, Friday morning at 8 o'clock. That's kind of it's a difficult thing, and yet you guys get a loyal following.
It is. It's like we're kind of like this little. We're kind of like this this club, like this little private club of people who are just really passionate about innovation, you know, technology, business, design. It's just a great group of people, and it's a great organization that supports entrepreneurship in the city. And I think that for the city, that's really different. It's like exchanging business, you know, vibrancy in the city, understanding that we're a great bunch of people that have different practices, have different values, you know, that sometimes don't even think differently, but we share a common value, is that we love, we love innovation.
And it's a big accomplishment to get that variety of speakers, you know, and you do, as you mentioned, you go from design, innovation, you have scientists, you have motivational speakers, you have all kinds of people, and yet it always feels very unified and tied together, you know, and I find that they're all interesting, and you get, you know, people coming back every week, even though the topic ranges, you know, so widely.
Yeah. So
it's how intensive has it been to commit to that kind of a group and keep coming back and filming and working to promote it?
You know, it's sometimes it is a challenge because, you know, you want to be of service to the community that you love, but at the same time you have to balance work as well and personal life. But, you know, usually it comes down to like there's a great community there that will take on some of the burden and some of the stress, or it's a shared group community of really passionate contributors, like Mike Schaefer's, you know, always there. You know, you have Mike Mills, you have John Cho, you know, you have Michael Castaneda, who's like always working on the podcast, you know, and I'm always there recording the video and uploading it, editing it. So it's a group effort, it's a community effort, and it's the shared value that we're committed to doing it because we know that we're doing something that's a service to others.
Right.
You know, where one person is always there to pick up if somebody's not there, and also we have a community that will help support us there too.
Absolutely.
Like if we need the helping hand. Oh, of course, you know. I also have to thank Innovate Pasadena, of course. You know, you've been a great supporter of ours, you know, in helping build our community and grow.
Well, and I think that meetup group really encapsulates what Innovate Pasadena is all about and the mission of the organization.
Oh, sure.
And you obviously are a fan because you
Yeah.
co-organize 2 meetups on behalf of Innovate Pasadena. So you
Yeah.
must be doing something right.
Oh, Christy Connor also, she also runs, like, we not only have keynote speakers, but we also do something which is network dating, which I have to credit Christy Connors for that one, because that was pretty amazing. Once or twice a year, we'll do like something like a networking event where it's like kind of like speed dating, where you have a quick 5-minute like round chat and you exchange information about who you are and ideas, and it's just a great way to build a stronger community of networking.
Get right to the
Yeah,
point.
get right to the point.
Shy people can jump right in there.
Yeah. So
And everyone with Friday Coffee Meetup is really good at welcoming everybody,
Yeah.
even the shy folks,
Of course,
and
yeah.
making them feel at ease and at home and really, get
Yeah.
into the community.
absolutely.
So 2 meetups, working on your own entrepreneurial efforts, doing big art direction projects. Some people would say that's more than enough. How did you get into doing meetups, doing community service, sharing some of your knowledge with others? What drove you to
Oh, wow.
participate?
That's actually a really good question. About 3 years ago, a life event had changed my view of like where I sit in our community, especially in the community of Pasadena, and what was missing, I believe, at the time, as I was trying to get through all my professional endeavors and things, is that like I was lacking something and I didn't figure out what it was. What had changed was my perception of where I sat, in the grander scheme of things. Is that like I learned very quickly that no designer should ever be an island.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that is true.
That was the first thing I had to learn, and also learning to be, when I understood that being of service to people, it comes back to you a lot. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like when I believe that like I'm not at the center of the universe, that a higher purpose for me actually governs my my endeavors, my moves, my passions, that I'm able to give up to, and that is learning how to serve others, in a community had really brought me back something that I was really missing actually in my professional career for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I never knew that until I actually stepped foot into that room over at Friday Coffee Meetup.
So who or what was it that pulled you in and kept you coming back?
Actually, you know what? It's actually that higher purpose. It was just like I realizing that like there's a group of people here that are exchanging ideas and servicing each other, for a common good, and that is to drive innovation, to help your business grow, to help you grow professionally, to help a young startup, get past their first funding round,
Right.
to get small businesses, off the ground and keep them sustainable. So those are the things that drive me. And servicing a community like that has really changed me. It really, really, really changes you when you're of service to others.
What's one of the big things that you feel it's brought to you in your life?
Oh, wow. I think it's brought me, peace. I think driving for over 20 years professionally, you kind of get to a state where you don't know where your sense of value is anymore. You don't know where, why you're working those day to day, those hours to hours anymore.
Right.
When you see the faces of people when they say, wow, what you said today, or the speaker that spoke today, or what you taught today in the workshop really, gives me a lot of value. And, it took me a long time to learn how to say thank you.
Oh.
And actually being a part of this community has really taught me how to be gracious and learned how to say thank you, and ask how else I can be of service to you. So it's a great driver for that, to be outside of myself,
That's and you now I'm happy that you chose Pasadena as that community to give back to.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular tie or affinities? Why Pasadena and not somewhere else in LA?
I've worked abroad. I've worked in several big cities. I worked at several big agencies. I think what the draw in Pasadena is that the people that come and work here, they're very passionate about what they do. I mean, they're, but they want to do it in a way where it makes sense to them. There is, when you're out there, there really is several different structures at various different capacities in different professional levels.
Right.
Right. But when you're an independent entrepreneur or a startup or a small business or a small practice or a service, you're kind of like a different animal in a way. I think what draws people to Pasadena is that like those free thinkers, those independent thinkers, those people who wants to build a different framework for themselves, that they try to get their professional careers off the ground, allows that. It's really different than other cities where it's like you have to be in a specific format
Right.
in order to succeed in various different capacities.
It is, I think it's the perfect place to do business. I think it's the perfect storm of, design and design thinking and science
Sure.
and entrepreneurship. All, we're sort of the epicenter here.
Right. And you think about a city sort of like provides all those avenues already. You think about JPL, you think about Caltech, you think about Art Center, you think about all the museums in the city. It's just such a great creative outlet. I mean, the city thrives on creativity.
It does.
And innovation. It really is a great place for that.
It is certainly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking with us about Pasadena and innovation and your experience and sharing some of your insights. And we thank you for joining us, and we hope you come watch us again next time. And remember, stay innovative.